Hey everyone, Scott here, and I won a tournament at my locals using Mechikabura. So I thought in this video I would talk a bit about the event and also go over the deck list. So yeah, in terms of what the event actually was, it was, I believe they called it a store celebration. It was basically just to kind of celebrate the fact that the store's back open, that we're out of lockdown and we're able to go there again to play. And in terms of like some of the prizes we had like some event pack 7s, some championship 2020s, some player choice cards, as well as like some cards from like the newest set, Supreme Rivalry. Like I got a bit more than everyone else because I won the event, so I got some extras. We also got like, I personally got like 5 packs of Supreme Rivalry and I got like 2 SRs out of that, so can't be too upset with that. Also, I got this playmat here. I guess it's just one of the ones they had going spare. So yeah, in terms of how many people were at the event, there was only actually 10 people playing. I think we had space for like up to 16 people, I believe. So there was like 8 of us from the store that we kind of go there on a weekly basis. I guess technically 9 of us from the locals were there. I gotta give a shout out to Ethan, who did a really good job actually running the event. But yeah, in terms of players, there was like 8 of us from the locals and we had 2 guys come over from Newport. Both really cool guys, actually. And I guess we'll be seeing them again this weekend when we go to Newport for the regionals that they're holding. We only had 4 rounds, I guess, with only 10 people. Any more rounds than that and the matchups start to get a bit kind of uneven in terms of... my first round was against Invoker and I 2-0'd. He wanted to use the Catastrophic Blow and the 6-drop Goku to basically do like 4 or 5 damage to me in a single turn. And because Mechikabura being a Wish leader, I was able to just awaken at like 7 life most of the time, so I was just sitting there on 7 life, so he had no way of kind of getting me with Catastrophic Blow. Second round was against Shamron, and I won 1 game from that, and we were only actually able to finish 1 game in that whole hour that we had, and that was a very close game. There was a lot of back and forth. One of the best games I've ever played, actually. And I just about won. I mean, he like Fu shrouded in mystery'd me, and I still managed to like combo out of all of his attacks, and yeah, it was just crazy game. Then third round I played Blue Future Trunks. I 2-0'd there as well. Looked like it was going to go to the third game, especially that second game was very close as well. Just constantly like God sealing anything big that I was trying to get down that didn't have deflect. And then for the final round, I was against Green Reboot Gohan, and I won the first game, lost the second 2 games. So actually nobody at the event went the whole thing unbeaten. I believe Aaron, who finished second with Mechikabura, also lost to Green Reboot Gohan. I was probably actually lucky even to win that first game. Like I was sitting there with 2 Supreme Kais in my hand. 2 of this Supreme Kai negate in my hand, and he only had like 2 cards in his warp, and then he overwhelmed, so he put him up to like 5-6 cards in the warp, and so I was actually able to play both of these Kai negates. And in game like 2 and 3, I'm not sure if he had it in there to begin with or if he sideboarded it in, but Focus Breakthrough, when I tried to play the Poutine in both that second and third game, he just Focus Breakthrough'd and sent it to the drop area and just steamrolled me. So yeah, now I'll move on and start to talk about the actual deck itself. So in terms of the leader, I'm not going to go over every single skill on all the cards because I just don't want to waste people's time who already kind of know how the cards work. Really, the one piece of advice I could kind of give you for this leader, if you're thinking about maybe playing the deck, is be very conservative in terms of when you activate the Activate Man on his backside. Like there's very few cases in which you actually want to steal cards from your opponent's side of the board, and you just have so many ways in the deck of like warping your opponent's battle cards that you're better off just using one of those, sending it to the warp, and then that kind of fuels the rest of the deck. And with that second choice that you have, I know a lot of people look at that and they say, right, well, you're giving him triple attack, and then you get to draw a card off each attack, so that's basically going +3. That's not actually the case, because if you look at the activate main, you have to put a card on the bottom before you choose the effect. So when you give him triple attack, you're putting a card on the bottom. So to even activate, you go -1 card in hand. First attack takes you back to 0. Second attack is +1. Third attack is +2 in terms of cards in hand. So people look at that and then go, well, it's a +2 in hand. That's still pretty good. I want to use it in every game just to get those 2 extra cards in your hand. The thing about that is, to give him triple attack, yeah, you're going to end up with 2 more cards for all 3 swings. But if you don't give him triple attack and just swing them once normally, you get a card in your hand, so you go +1 anyway. So activating that second skill and attacking with him 3 times is only really 1 card in your hand better than just swinging with him, not giving him triple attack. And so I think that you have to kind of reevaluate the skill based on that fact. And especially if you remove the 7 Dark Dragon Balls from your drop area, that kind of messes up some of your cards in the deck, their ability to come out for only 1 energy. I guess we'll talk about them soon, Shroom, Salsa and Toast. So that is the one thing you need to keep in mind, is I would leave it as late as you possibly can, and there's actually a few cards in the deck and side deck that are really good to activate alongside giving them triple attack. So in a lot of cases you're probably better off waiting for one of those cards to actually see it in your hand and to be able to use them before you give him triple attack. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say about the leader. So the first set of cards to look at are the Dark Dragon Balls, with this being a wish leader. You need 7 Dark Dragon Balls in the drop. So we're running 3 Yearning for the Dark Dragon Balls and 4 Dark Empire Strikes Back. So this card here is actually really versatile, and it's more than just something to drop with Dark Empire. It's basically got 5k combo power with this Activate Battle, which is really important in certain matchups, certain aggro matchups especially. It might be worth swinging with your leader, grabbing 2 of these guys and then just holding them till your opponent's turn and just comboing out of their kind of early attacks, especially against something like Green Reboot Gohan. Also the Activate main of making your opponent warp a 1-drop. If your opponent realizes that you have this card in your deck and they know what the Activate main does, they should never actually play a 1-drop that doesn't have barrier out on the board. But sometimes I guess you will catch people out. But yeah, this is really good. I guess we'll talk about it when we start to look at the Shroom, Salsa and Toa. This has another really good function in the deck. But yeah, generally in most matchups you're going to swing with your leader. You're going to grab one of these, activate this, drop that along with it. So next up we're going to take a look at the unisons that I'm running in the deck, or that I did run in the deck in this tournament. So it's 3 Black Smoke Dragon and a single Toa, Dark Demon Realm Scientist. Originally when the deck came out, I proxied 3 more copies of this card and was testing a full 4 of this card. I think the best split is probably 2 and 2. It's just these 2 cards are just so different. There are some matchups where this card can be absolutely insane. There are some matchups where just the value of being able to draw extra cards is really what you need. I guess one advantage of the Black Smoke Dragon is that it gives you an extra way of getting your Dark Dragon Balls from the deck into the drop. He also has Rejuvenate, but I almost never actually activate it. I think I've maybe done it once after weeks and weeks of playing with this deck. Just generally play it out for 1 with 1 marker on it and just do his active main, give him a marker, do the -1 to draw a card. There's also the fact that you shuffle the deck. The way it's worded, you shuffle the deck even if you don't put Dark Dragon Balls in the drop. It's not shuffle your deck if you look through it, it's just shuffle your deck and then draw a card. That is really good with things like the leader or the Poutine, where you have to put cards from your hand on the bottom of the deck. This guy lets you shuffle the deck and then you have a chance of drawing the cards you had to get rid of. This Toa, meanwhile, is absolutely fantastic in certain matchups, especially ones where they remove their own battle cards with skills. So an example would be something like Shadow Dragons, like if you can play this down turn 1. When they go from the 1-drop ball into the 4-drop Shamron, you'll gain a marker on this because the Dragon Ball goes away and it's via a skill. Almost never do the +0 to warp something 3 or less. There are just better ways of warping cards in the deck than doing that +0. And then the -4 can be absolutely backbreaking against certain decks. Just the ability to steal one of your opponent's cards. And unlike with the leader or some of the other effects that let you take cards from your opponent's side of the field, I guess there's actually not too many in this build of the deck that I'm running. Like I said, with the leader or the 8-drop, which doesn't technically gain control but plays cards from their warp, both those skills negate all the skills on the card, whereas this one doesn't. It just gains control of it. So again, like during the Shadow Dragons game, I was kind of hoping I would find this to steal their 9-drop Shamron, the one that negates skills every time your opponent plays a card. You can choose it and negate its skills. This is fantastic for stealing that, because then anytime they play a card, you're able to activate that skill to negate the skills on the card they're playing. Yeah, so if my other copies of these turn up in time, I'll be running a 2-2 split at the regionals this weekend. And I guess to go along with the Black Smoke Dragon, I'm running 2 Dark Shamron Wicked Wishmaster. Generally, I'm playing this actually to put it out on the field. If you can actually get this off and get it to stick on the board for a couple of turns, this can pretty much win you the game on its own. I'm only running it at 2 because that thing I said of if you can keep it on the board is kind of hard to do. With him being only 2 cost and not having barrier, not having deflect, basically means you're paying 2 for him. There's no way of getting him out any cheaper. And sometimes, like if your opponent bounces it back to your hand with God Sealing, or they play Charismatic Villain and KO it, even against decks like King Cold, where they have the field card that can KO things 2 or less. There's just so many ways for your opponent to incidentally get rid of this card, like as a bonus to some other effect that they're also getting, like Dormant Potential, Shocking Death Ball. You know, there's just a lot of ways of KOing 2-drops. So I did experiment with running 4 copies of it, but at that point you see it too often when you're trying to get other stuff. And yeah, if you can get it out, if you can keep it out, it can be amazing. So yeah, let's move on and start to talk about what I guess is kind of the bread and butter of this deck, is your kind of 4 costs that can come in for 1. So we have Salsa, we have Shroom, we have as well Toa. I'm only running 3 Toas. I probably should bump that up to 4. And basically when it comes down to it, there are situations where some of these cards are going to be better than others. Let me gather them actually up now that I've shown you how many copies I'm running of each. Like, there are some games where Shroom is going to be the best card of these 3. There are going to be games where it's Salsa, and there are going to be other games where it's Toa. It really comes down to the matchup. Like, if your opponent isn't going to play anything 3 or less, then Shroom is just pointless. It's something that you can charge, put on the bottom for your skills, or just not worry about it. Just don't even try and play it. Just combo it away. Or even in best of 3s, you can actually side it out. But against things like the new blue Gohan, which at least the build that I played against the most uses a lot of 2-cost skillless cards, this becomes such a good card in that matchup because you're always going to be warping their 2-cost card when he attacks. So he's fantastic in those matchups. There are going to be some cases where Salsa's the best because he is card draw, as well as the fact that he makes your opponent warp card, draw a card when he's played. There will be games where your opponent is going to try to not play anything 2 or less, or they're not going to play any 1-drops that don't have barrier, just to deny your ability to get cards into their warp. They'll kind of restrict their own game plan in order to try and mess up yours. In those cases, Salsa becomes a lot better, because you just play them out and now they have to warp something from their hand. And then there are going to be cases where Toa's better. Just the fact that she can warp something from the board with like no energy restriction, unlike Shroom. And the fact that she does the warp card draw card effect of Salsa. So she kind of does a bit both of these, what these guys do. It's just she doesn't warp a battle card from your opponent's drop area. Which again, in some cases, in certain matchups, they're King Hold, for instance, maybe. They're not going to have battle cards necessarily in their drop area for you to send to the warp. So Toa could be a lot better in that case. You're just able to get rid of something from the board. So yeah, actually the thing I was referring to earlier about the yearning for the Dark Dragon Balls, and the way this works with these guys is basically for if your opponent tries to play Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan, they're all 15k or less, and you play them using Activate Main, which is not a keyword skill. So Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan would hit these cards. Well, I mean, it will hit these cards if it's out on the board. But the good thing about Yearning for the Dark Dragon Balls is its active main forces your opponent to warp a 1-drop. Doesn't ignore barrier, but Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan doesn't have barrier. So if your opponent sides this in, thinking they can hit your Toa, your Salsa, your Shroom, you basically just swing with your leader, grab at least one copy of Yearning, and then just activate main, send this to the warp, and now you're free to use any of these guys. So that's what's so good about this card, is that it kind of makes it so the deck isn't completely destroyed by Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan. So that's one thing to keep in mind if your opponent is going to side this in. If you're going to be playing against Mechikabura and you think it would be good to side this in, that's one thing you've got to keep in mind, is if your opponent realizes and is actually thinking they can get rid of it very easily, it's not a great side deck option against this deck and these cards in particular. And again, as I was saying with the leader's second choice on the Activate main, these can only be played for 1 black if you have 2 Dark Dragon Balls in your drop area. So if you remove them to give your leader triple attack, suddenly these guys, you can't play them from your hand for 1 black. So at that point, if you have done it, these become kind of dead in your hand because you never want to pay 4 for them. That's just an invitation for your opponent to just like God Seal in it or Charismatic Villain it, and then you literally spent 4 energy to do nothing. So that's the one thing you've got to bear in mind with these cards. Now there is actually one way in the deck to play those Toa, Shroom and Salsa if you have used your leader's ability, which is this Mechikabura, which I'm running at 4. I may cut a copy of this and go down only to 3, but he has an Activate main that you look at the top 7 and you can get any of these Shroom and Salsa and Toes that we were just talking about. I used this a few times during the tournament and I actually whiffed, so it's not guaranteed that you're going to hit something, which is why I'm thinking of cutting a copy and going down to 3. There's also the fact that he replaces himself in your hand when you play him, so you just pay 1 and then pay another 1 and you can potentially get one of those Shroom and Salsas or even the Toa out. So yeah, he's a decent card. It's not... Like I said, that those guys are like the bread and butter of this deck. These kind of aren't. These are just like a little incidental thing that you can maybe do if you're getting unlucky and you're not finding your Shroom and Salsa and Toas in the hand early. Or in the late game, you can use it to get them from the deck if you have got rid of your Dark Dragon Balls. But it's not absolutely vital for the deck. And it's another card along with like the 2-drop dragon that I was talking about. Very easy for your opponent to remove this, so you can't really rely on it sticking on the board for multiple turns to kind of get value over and over and over again. Plus there's the fact that you can only use the Activate main once on all copies of the card, so there's no point having more than one of these guys out really. So that's another thing to bear in mind. Really, the one thing I found this most useful for was against like the new Mecha Freezer negate, where if you want to keep attacking you have to switch one of your cards on the board to rest mode. This is like actually a pretty good target to switch to rest mode to let you get another attack in The Supreme Kai Negate is actually another good target for that as well, because once she's played, she's kind of useless on the board. There is one other 1-drop black card that we're playing, which is Toa, Rewriting History. So I didn't actually look at anyone else's kind of Mechikabura list before I put mine together. So I don't know if this is like a common inclusion in a lot of Mechikabura decks. I put her in there just because outside of the leader, there's not actually any way to get Dark Dragon Balls from your deck to your hand. Like the Toa Shroom itself, so we looked at the Black Smoke Dragon, they send them straight to the drop. So she's another like turn 1 play you can do to get a Dark Dragon Ball into your hand, which is especially good if like you only find one in your hand off the mulligan and you go in first. You can charge something, play this down, get a second Dark Dragon Ball, and then you can, it doesn't even matter which one you got in your opening hand, you can get the Dark Empire or you can get Yearning. There's also the fact that she can get Dark Dragon Balls from your drop area, which is the only card I know of that has a way of doing that. So obviously before you give your leader triple attack, it lets you get back, you know, Yearning, say your opponent sees you've got all 3 Yearnings in the drop and then they try and play Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan. You can potentially play a Toa, get back this, activate it, warp there, Dark Power Black Mass Saiyan, and now your cards are safe again. Or she can just grab you the Dark Empire and you can use like either another copy of herself or just any really dark Demon Realm, or I think it's Dark Demon Realm or Demon God that you can drop with Dark Empire. So she's another way that even once you've like wished and awakened, you can still dig a little bit through your deck. I did experiment for 1 week with running a non-black Dark Dragon Balls to be able to use her second ability. I just run one of the red Dark Dragon Balls from like the Dark Broly stuff. I ran the new Overrealm Dark Broly and the 7-drop, like 1 copy of each, and tried to see if I was able to use the second ability on her, pay 2, drop the Dark Dragon Ball and get the 6-drop Broly out, swing with that, pay 1, evolve the 7-drop Broly on top. But ultimately I found that it didn't make the deck better. Like, it was just another line of play that was like the same as any other in the deck. It wasn't like massively better or anything like that, so I decided to take it back out and just stick with kind of a pretty standard, I think, Mechikabura build. But that's one thing to bear in mind, you could try and do that. Also, while I was doing that, because I hadn't the Overrealm Broly in the deck as well, I ran Robaloo as the secret rare in the deck just to see if I could pull that off either. And I never could, and she never felt like particularly useful. So yeah, that's it for this Toa. 2 copies I think is enough because she's best like turn 1, or maybe in certain cases like on later turns she can be good in certain matchups. But the main thing is that if you find her after you've given your leader triple attack, you're not able to get any Dark Dragon Balls back because they're removed from the game. So I think running any more copies of her would be a mistake, just because there are situations where none of these skills you're going to be able to use. She's another 1-drop for Power Burst as well, so that's something to bear in mind. So next up we have another card in this deck that I think is just absolutely fantastic, which is King Vegeta, A Kingdom Lost. So this is the card you kind of want to build to on your early turns. You want to try and get 3 cards in your opponent's warp, so you can play this out for 2 rather than 6. So really the early turns are just about getting 7 Dark Dragon Balls in the drop and getting 3 cards in your opponent's warp. This guy is just fantastic, mainly for his once per turn auto there of while he's in rest mode. Your opponent, the first time they attack your leader each turn, they warp a card from the hand. Basically, while this guy's in rest mode, it acts as basically a deadly defender. Like, your opponent is going to want to attack into this. Occasionally they'll attack either into one of your other battle cards or your unison rather than this guy, but most of the time they're going to be going into this guy. And at that point it's just a lot easier to defend this guy than your leader. He's 19k as opposed to 15, so your opponent like swings with something that's 15, they super combo to go up to 25, and then you just super combo again, go up to 29, and then that's it. Like, if your opponent is swinging with anything 15k, you can go 1-for-1 in terms of comboing. Like, if they swing with something with 15k power and put a 5k combo on, you only need to put a 5k combo on to get above it. So it's not a situation where you're losing more cards from your hand to save this than they're necessarily using to try and clear it. Obviously, the opposite becomes true once they start swinging into this with stuff with like 20k power. Like, they swing with something 20k power, and now you have to combo something to go up to 24. And then if they swing into it with something even bigger than that, then it becomes even worse. Also, the fact he has barrier is fantastic, because you'd be surprised how often people just couldn't deal with this. They just had no way of getting rid of something ignoring barrier. So yeah, this is, like I say, one of the best cards in the deck in my opinion. So many cases where I get to like turn 6, turn 7 of the game, and I would just have this guy on the field and still be at like 7-8 life, because all my opponent's attacks were going into this guy. And you have a lot of defense in the deck as well. Cards like Poutine, Supreme Kai, Darkness Judgment. There's just so many ways to protect this guy that I've never struggled to keep him on the board for a couple of turns. So next up we have one of the main like wing conditions of the deck, which is the 8-cost Mechikabura. Originally I was running at 3, just because I pulled 1, I ordered 2, but then I pulled another one, so I put it up to 4, and I'm kind of glad I did. This was another card that I would say was like the MVP of this tournament. You would think, with the fact that his auto does not ignore barrier, that there would be a lot of cases where it would just be useless and you wouldn't be able to clear anything off your opponent's board. And that's what I was originally thinking of, but actually, with the current meta, it seems like there's not a lot of stuff with barrier about. Which also, like I was saying with this King Vegeta, might be why people aren't running as many ways of dealing with cards that do have barrier, just because they're not as common at the moment. The fact he has Deflect also is fantastic, because you're paying 4 for him, so if your opponent could just God Seal in, and then you get nothing for paying 4 energy, this guy would suck. And there's also the fact that he's 8, so they can't charismatic villain him either. Like, the cards you get from your opponent's warp have to be 7 or less, so they can charismatic villain them. But at that point, they're charismatic villain in one of their own cards, just to send it back to their own like drop area. So that's actually a pretty good trade in most cases. One thing to keep in mind with this guy as well. So there are some matchups where this is going to be amazing. Like, for instance, the new yellow androids deck. They run like these, or they generally run these 2 3-cost skillless. And if you can get these into your opponent's warp and then play this guy, you're getting a 30k double strike and 2 30k single strikes on the board for 4 energy. That's like fantastic. Obviously, this guy's a bit more vulnerable to something like a Topo or a Poutine in the mirror match, or even like Heroic Prospect. Just any kind of card that is like a floodgate, because you're going to be swinging in with like 3 big attacks rather than like 1 single attack, in which case like floodgate negates become a lot worse. But another thing to bear in mind with this guy is sometimes there'll be games where you look through your opponent's warp and there's basically 1 good card in there for you to take, and the rest are just like little 10k, 5k kind of bodies. In that case, don't be afraid to take a super combo like this that has 10k combo power. If it's one like this where it has 0k combo power, don't bother taking it in that case. But if it has 10k combo power, so I'll put a scenario on the board for you. Right, this isn't a particularly realistic scenario, but I'll just put it on the board in front of us. So say you play this. You look through your opponent's warp and they have like 1 20k guy in there. The rest are all like 10 or 5k guys. You can just take a super combo. Its skills will be negated, so you won't get to draw the card. And depending on what your opponent's playing, you might not even fulfill the conditions to kind of draw off the super combo anyway. But let's say you play like a 20k guy, you grab a super combo, and then you swing in 30k double strike. And then you can either combo this away if they don't negate it. So now it's 40k double strike. Because you would be surprised how often, like, you swing this guy in, 30k double strike, your opponent's sitting there with like 2 super combos in their hand, so they can get 35 quite easily. You just stick that extra super combo on top, and now suddenly they need 3 super combos in their hand, and you took 1 from their warp, so they can only have 3. So yeah, that can be a way of pushing, making sure this attack goes through, or you could swing with the 20k guy, combo on that, and now you've got a 30k double and another 30k attack. Or if they negate, or say they floodgate, they like play a topo, you're not going to be able to swing with the other stuff you took. So just having that super combo on the defense, when they're swinging into you, you can like 10k combo power, and then it goes to their drop. So that's one thing to bear in mind with this guy. One tip I can kind of give you of how to use this guy. Another kind of win condition that I'm only running 1 copy of, because I only own 1 copy, is Dark Mask King Devilish Dominator. So this is another guy you can get out for 4 if your opponent has, I think in this case it's 3 or more cards in their warp. You can play it for 4. Another one like the Mechikabura we were just looking at that has Deflect. If it didn't have Deflect, it would be terrible, because you pay for your opponent God Ceilings and you've spent 4 to do nothing. Unfortunately, it's only 6, unlike the Mechikabura, which is 8. So this gets hit by Charismatic Villain, because it's done that barrier. So that is one thing you gotta keep in mind against green decks. If your opponent has a unison with 2 markers out, this guy just isn't viable. This guy's really good in some cases, especially where you've been able to warp a lot of cards from their drop area or from their board. Because if you swing and your opponent has 10 cards in the warp, restands. And also, if they negate one of his attacks, assuming you get 2 attacks off, you can just warp 1 of their life. And then he's just like 25k triple strike. So, like I say, it's a good game ender. If I had another copy, I might run 1 more copy of this and 1 less copy of Mechikabura. That's something I need to look at in the future. But like I say, there are some situations where this is going to get hit by something like Charismatic Villain, so that is a reason why I'm not too worried that I'm only running 1 copy. Then we have these super combos. I guess I kind of showed them off before. So for this tournament I was running a 2-2 split, 2 Vegetas and 2 Toas. I actually meant to go up to 4 Toas and just get rid of these Vegetas, but I forgot to do it before the tournament. There's just so many games where you're sitting there with more than 4 life, in which case this Vegeta is kind of useless, especially if you've been keeping this King Vegeta out on the board in rest mode and your opponent's swinging into this constantly. You're not going to even be able to like take the life to go down to 4 to make this live. So these 2 cards, I wouldn't say they're full-on like non-bow, as they call it, like a non-combo, 2 cards that kind of work against each other, but the fact that this is redirecting attacks away from your leader can mean that getting down to 4 life is difficult, and I guess I'll talk a bit more about that when I look at the sideboard that I had. So yeah, of all the weeks that I've been doing like this 2-2 splits, there've been a ton of times I've had like 1 or 2 copies of this super combo in my hand while I'm on like 6-7 life, just not able to use it. There's only been 1 time in all the games I played with this deck where I wasn't able to have Sparking 5 for this. Even if you don't have Sparking 5, you're gonna have 10k combo power as opposed to literally nothing. So I need to take these out. I need to go up to a full 4 of these. There's no super combo I can think of in black, except maybe like Babidi, where it's always going to be good. And even Babidi is not always good, because if you do the leader's skill, get rid of the 7 Dark Dragon Balls, that's like 7 less cards in your drop area for Babidi. And with him being capped now at 15, he's just not a good option either, I don't think. But yeah, I need to go up to 4 Toas. Now let's move on and start to talk about the negates. So for Poutine and for Kai, as our like battle card negates, Kai, it turns out, is fantastic in the mirror match because it sends cards to their owner's warp and then plays them in their owner's battle area. If your opponent has taken any of your cards and then they attack, you can negate the attack, send your card to your warp, and it gets played back into your battle area. In the game against Shamron that I had, he stole my 8-drop Mechikabura, I think twice, and I was able to get it back into my battle area twice with this Supreme Kai. So it's fantastic for that reason. The one issue with both these cards, and I kind of mentioned it before, is against really heavy aggro, like Reboot Green Gohan. If your opponent doesn't have a warp, you're just not able to fill their warp up really early. She is 3 in your hand, which is basically useless at that point. You're not going to have 3 energy. And Poutine is 2 energy and has to hit the board in order to get the kind of floodgate ability. In fact, both these cards have to actually hit the board to get the real value of the card. So with things like Focus Breakthrough, hits both of these. I guess God Sealing hits both of these if your opponent's really desperate. Super Kamehameha also, basically any of those 4 or less life counterplays from what set was it? Was it set 7, set 8? Set 8. They're always gonna hit both of these. Another card that really messes me up when I'm playing the mirror match against Aaron is he has Koetsukai, which I unfortunately don't own any copies of, and that hits both of these as well. I think it's, you have to warp 2 cards from your hand if you want to play either of these, and like I say, you need to play them to get the autos, which is where the real value of the card is. That said, in most matchups, these are going to be some of the best cards in the deck, especially Poutine. So I wouldn't cut any of those just because I'm worried about, like I say, Focus Breakthrough or Koetsukai or anything like that. I'm still going to keep these at 4 going forward. But it is something you may want to keep in mind, and maybe in the sideboard especially, is to get some extra card negates into your deck for the matchups where these aren't going to be able to hit the board. Speaking of extra card negates, that's the next part of the deck, which is 2 Darkness Judgment and 2 Power Burst. Kind of wishing I had an extra copy of this card that I could run in the deck. Unfortunately, I'm stuck on 2 at the minute. I don't think I've ever actually used this as a negate, but just its active main that you can activate for free as long as your opponent has 3 cards in their warp, and just give any of your cards plus 5k power for the turn. So even if you have the King Vegeta 6-drop out, you can give it to that, and then each of your opponent's kind of attacks into that, they have to combo even more potentially from their hand to try and clear it. It's just fantastic, basically as Senzu Beam without untapping the energy, but for free. So yeah, this is a fantastic card. And then Power Burst is just something for when you've tapped out, or say you left 2 energy open, you Poutined, and your opponent still goes in on you, and they warp the 2 cards from your hand, which does happen. It happened a couple of times actually in this tournament, where I was on 1-2 life, my opponent was really trying to push through Poutine, warping cards from their hand. Just having that way of right, I'll take the life instead. To definitely negate that attack, they've warped 2 cards in their hand basically for no benefit, and it lets you get back one of your 1-drops. So yeah, these are fantastic cards for both of those reasons. Then we come to the Overrealm of the deck. I do actually run Overrealm. I know some people would look at the fact that, well, you've got to have the 7 Dark Dragon Balls in your drop area, so why would you run Overrealm? If you need to play one of these for Overrealm, that's when you remove the 7 Dragon Balls to give your leader triple attack, especially in combination with Fu the Dark Banisher. But I'll just talk a little bit about Secret Identity before that. Very rare that I actually use this. I'm thinking of swapping this out for one of the cards I have in my sideboard. I was running this just as a way of getting some cards from my opponent's board into the warp. You can choose up to a total of 6, and they go to their owner's warp when you play this guy, and then you get a 25k attack. I mean, it's pretty good just on its own for the fact that it's a 25k attack that you can get out for 0 energy. Just got to overwhelm 6, and I've never actually had an issue getting between 6 and 10 cards in my drop area other than the Dark Dragon Balls. maybe against very, very aggro decks, or decks where I just haven't had to combo out of any attacks, or they just haven't cleared my board at all. Those are maybe the cases where I have maybe struggled to get enough cards in the drop for the overrun. So yeah, I'm thinking of taking that out. But these two, I think, work really well together. I've won a lot of games off the back of just these two cards. Basically, you do the leader's skill, get rid of the 7 Dragon Balls from your drop. Then you play Fu, overarm 8, pay 4. Like I said, I've never had an issue with that. And now you have 6 swings into your opponent, 3 of which are drawing you a card. And anytime they want to activate a skill, they have to warp a card from the hand, and otherwise they can't activate the skill. So that means if they want to negate, they're activating a counterplay skill, so they've got to warp a card from the hand. If they want a super combo, they're activating an auto, so they have to warp a card from the hand. So yeah, really good way of just, like I say, getting 3 15k and then 3 25k swings in on your opponent. And if somehow your opponent is able to survive that, then they probably deserve the win at that point. Like, the one thing I guess that this is really vulnerable to, this play, is because you only gain triple attack for the turn, and with this guy being overrun means it goes away at the end of the turn. If you do this and your opponent say Baby Hatch, they play Baby Hatch Act and negate your attack, stop you attacking for turns, and they just like warp an extra card from the hand just to activate that, then you're kind of screwed. Dormant Potential, similar thing. Topo, similar thing. Like, if they have enough cards in hand that they can afford to kind of warp just to screw you over, that is something you need to bear in mind. So you kind of have to think, like, does my opponent have a way of kind of stopping my attacks for the turn that I need to be worried about? So you have to kind of play it kind of safe. I often won't do it on turn 4. I'll wait till like turn 6 a lot of the time, which is not hard to get to turn 6 with this deck, as long as you're not playing like Green Reboot Gohan. Just with the Poutines and Kais and King Vegetas, you just have no issues kind of staying alive till turn 6. So especially if you have Poutine in your hand, you pay 4 for this, and then if your opponent does do something to it or stops you from attacking, at least you have like 2 energy open, either for 2 Kais or another Poutine. So that's the one thing to bear in mind. Like I say, good together. And then the one secret rare of the deck, like I mentioned before, I tried Robaloo. Also, at first I tried Xenobu as like a way of stopping my opponent's like floodgate negates as well, especially. The issue I found with that is that Xenobu can't be used with your leader. So if you do the leader's thing and start swinging in, and your opponent like topos or Poutines in the mirror match against your leader, just not able to use Xenobu. So this is, I mean, it does something that the deck can't really do, which is it deals with things with barrier. Like you can see from all the cards we looked at so far, nothing in the deck ignores barrier. So just having this in is like, your opponent has something that's annoying on the board with barrier. You can get this guy out for 2 energy, switch it to rest mode, and then start attacking into it. If you're doing it on your turn, obviously. Or even if you're not, it'll be in rest mode when it gets to your turn, and you can start swinging into it. It's also another win condition, I guess, in and of itself, because you can pay 4 to get 2 40k double strike attacks, or 1 40k double strike attack and leave a blocker open. Unfortunately, it has the permanent where if it's removed from the battle area, it gets removed from the game instead. So again, in the mirror match, if your opponent like Supreme Kai's this, it's gone. And I guess that's something I didn't mention about the Supreme Kai, is with a lot of the newer secret rares having this skill of when it's removed, like Baby Hatch that I was just talking about. If you use Supreme Kai, send it to the warp, it just gets removed from the game instead, doesn't get played back into their battle area. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind. Also against Shamron, if they have the 9-drop out and you play this, you can't then pay 4 and start giving it a thing, because they will have negated all its skills, which did actually come up in the game I had against Shamron. We both forgot that he had the 9-drop out, and so I was swinging in for a 40k double strike until somebody pointed it out and we kind of went back and corrected it. But yeah, like I say, it does something the deck nothing else in the deck does, which is deal with barrier, and it's another kind of win condition. So that's it for the main deck. I believe, I could be wrong, I think that's 59 cards. I'm not worried about having that many cards in the deck because you basically take out 7 for the leader's skill. Only really if you end up with a lot of Dragon Balls in your life does it become an issue of having that many cards in your deck. But generally, I've found that end up with about 4 to 6 cards in the deck, and then like 1 to 3 at most in the life. On average, I mean, you can get super unlucky. I think the first time I played this deck, I had 6 balls in my life. But that was just like a freak one-off game. Generally, this weekend I only had like 1, 2 Dragon Balls in my life at most. So next, I'll talk about the sideboard I had. It wasn't the best. I built it very last minute, and I didn't have a ton of great cards to choose from to go in there. Just a lot of the good like black sideboard cards I just haven't picked up over the past year or so. So it was kind of slim pickings. I had a single Dark Power Black Saiyan, like I showed before. Again, this is just for like, I guess, Turles, I believe. I believe their thing is like autos that play them from the drop area. King Piccolo, I think, is the same thing. It plays them from the combo area as an auto. So this would hit a lot of those cards. Yeah, I can't remember, did I actually sideboard this in? I think I did against Future Trunks, because they have the cards that can get played from the hand when they're revealed. Like, they go from the life to the hand, they reveal it, and then they play it. I think I sided it in, although I didn't actually see it because there was only one copy. Another card I sided this in against Invoker and Future Trunks was the 1-cost Son Gohan, Change in History. Actually, I think I sided it in against Green Gohan as well, but that was because I took out everything that had like a 1-cost like combo power like that, or like the 8-drop Mechikabura, just things like that where I wasn't confident that I would have the energy to combo with them. I just put in anything that had like 5k combo power instead, like a free 5k combo power. This never actually came up, like my opponent never actually untapped energy with a counter, but obviously maybe that's just the fact they were playing around this card. But yeah, overall pretty good. Then I had 2 Demonic Absorption. Like I was saying before when talking about the Shamron, not having ways of dealing with barrier can kind of mess this deck up if they have something that has barrier that you need to get rid of. So I sided this in against Invoker, and in the second game he played up the 3-drop Vegeta. I immediately responded with this, sent it to his warp, and that basically won me the game off the back of that one play. Basically had no way of getting Invoker back up. I guess he didn't see another copy of the Vegeta, so I basically just steamrolled him from then on because he didn't have ways of playing his multicolor cards for 1 energy, so, or his multicolor extra cards for 1 energy. So yeah, that's why that was in there. I think I sided it in against Green Gohan for the same reason I sided in the Gohan we were just looking at, because it is basically 5k combo power if you use the Activate Battle. Super Kamehameha. This is another one, like I was saying before with the Vegeta Super Combo. You have to be at 4 or less life, and there was just games where I just wasn't getting to below 4 life. Like, I sided this in against Invoker because he had Topo in his deck. I wanted to be able to send Topo to the warp. But I also didn't want to go down to 4 life because he had Catastrophic Blow, so these end up being dead cards when I saw them, so I just had to put them on the bottom of my deck. I may cut this down just to 1 again because of there just being so many instances where you're just not able to use it. Because the needing to be at 4 life is as part of the counterplay. If it was just part of the permanent that let you play it for free, I would consider keeping it, just to pay 1 for it, but you have to be at 4 or less life to even get the counterplay off, so not the best card in the sideboard. I think I'm just going to go down to 1 copy. Next up we have Dabura, Darkness Perfected. This is another one I only ever sided it in for the combo power. Like, you're always going to be able to play it for 2. Generally, I would just rather spend that 2 energy on a poutine. And just looking at the cards I was playing against, there wasn't anything that I was like too worried about the turn that it got played. I think I will keep this in there because I think there are some decks this could be good against. I didn't get too much use of it this weekend. This is the card I was thinking about actually bringing into the deck instead of Secret Identity Mass Saiyan, because it works really well with the leader's second ability. I did side this in against Future Trunks, but didn't get a chance to use it. I think the game ended before I got to 6 energy. But if you use the leader's skill and then have 10 cards in the drop, pay 6, play this out. Now your opponent cannot negate any of these attacks if they super combo, similar to the... It's very similar to the kind of other food, the Dark Banisher that I do have in there. In this case, it kind of disincentivizes your opponent to use skills, because they have to warp a card from the hand. This just straight up says they can't use skills that aren't on their leader. So this, in combination with the giving your leader triple attack in the same turn, can be really good, because then you got 3 15k swings they can't negate, they can't super combo, and then you have a 30k double strike swing that they can't do anything with. And then it even goes over till their turn, so basically their next turn is kind of gone if you don't win straight off the back of this. The only one kind of reservation I would have about this is that you have to pay 6 for it, but I think in the situations where you're just not able to do it, you can just put it on the bottom of your deck and you can just charge it with this deck. There's not too much of a downside to having something that costs 6. So I'm thinking of main boarding that and taking the Secret Identity out, either moving that to the sideboard or just taking it out altogether. Next up we have Shamron the Wish Granter. This is one I brought in against Future Trunks, and then I realised it was stupid of me to bring this in against Future Trunks because it's 5 energy and doesn't have Deflect, and he had God Sealing, so I wasn't ever actually going to pay 5 and just to do nothing with this card. So next up was Gotenks Fusion Renewed. This is a 15k blocker that comes in, it's a negate that becomes a blocker once it hits the board. You have to warp 3 cards from your drop area in order to use the negate, which isn't too much of an issue against most decks. Against the mirror match, it's not great. You don't want to kind of fill up your own warp, but he gets his energy cost reduced by 1 during your opponent's turn if you have a 6 cost card out, which you do with this deck. You have the King Vegeta. You're quite often going to have him out, so he becomes like a 2k, a 2 cost negate that becomes a blocker. Then there's also the fact that if he stays on the board and you swing with him, you can put 3 cards from your warp back into your drop. So that, again, like I was talking about the mirror match, is really good. It also warps a battle card 3 or less as well when it swings. So it's kind of like an extra kind of shroom, I guess, in that case. But yeah, that thing of being able to get back 3 black battle cards from your warp, really good for the mirror match. Only sided it in against Green Gohan, and I didn't really get the chance to use it because I wasn't paying 2 for this. I was paying 2 for Poutine. He probably would have just focus breakthrough this instead of the Poutine. So it wouldn't have made much of a difference. I just had it in there for the combo power. Next up, we have one that I don't know why I put it in there now I'm looking at it, is Hachak, Vengeful Agent of Destruction. You don't have the Dark Babidi, so its activate main isn't great, but really the reason I wanted it was as another way of sending something 4 or less to the warp, but I think there are better ways of doing that in this deck. Like, there are better cards I could have in the sideboard for just warping cards. Like, I could get an extra demonic absorption in there or something. So again, only ever sided it in for the combo power, never actually used it. Kind of a mistake to put it in there. Similarly, there was this Hachak. as well. Basically, I was just looking at his activate main. Like, there are plenty of cards between 3 and 7 that potentially would be in my drop area for me to be able to play this guy out. Like, you have the King Vegeta, you have the Toa, the Shroom, the Salsa. Especially the Toa, because she's a blocker, so you kind of want to block with her, so she does go to a drop area. So I would have been able to get this guy out maybe in certain circumstances. I might keep it in there just because it's really good for attacking into your opponent's battle cards in rest mode. I had this Black Mask Saiyan Splinter in mind. So this one, again, this is another one where like it doesn't have barrier, it doesn't have deflect. So paying 4 for it would have been suspect in certain games. But really, I just wanted it for his auto. Since you're able to awaken at like 6-7 life, you will often have a life lead over your opponent. So just that ability of like being able to swing in once with this guy, warp 2 of your own life to get rid of one of theirs can often, I think, win you the game. Like I say, the only thing that's kind of sus about him is no barrier, no deflect, and no way of getting it out for less than 4. So I might keep it in there, I might not. I guess I'll have to see if I can find anything better to go in my sideboard. Protector of the People I had in there as well. I'm gonna probably include a few more copies of this. So with some of the cards I've been talking about removing, maybe may just end up becoming more copies of this guy. Just for like any kind of aggro when they're going to be hitting you a lot in a single turn. It's not great against Gohan, Green Gohan though. Like I probably would side it in just to have another negate. But you only get the +5k every time you're attacked with the battle card. Whereas Green Gohan's always swinging with his leader, so it's not great. I mean, I know the deck does also have battle cards that it plays to swing in to you, but they're going to generally go in with their leader first, so you're not going to get the full benefit of this. But like I say, I may throw a few extra copies of this in. I may throw in an extra copy of Power Burst as well, just to have a few more like extra card negates that I can use in those kind of really aggro matchups. And then the final card that was in my sideboard that I never sided in was Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta Supreme Saiyan Power. Basically, I just wanted it for the -5 of being able to warp one of your opponent's cards. It's kind of a pipe dream that I would ever be able to use this, though. Actually looking at it in between games, I realised how kind of bad this was. Because really, for it to get to 5, I'd have to pay 5 for it, because I don't really overround too much. I overround maybe once a game. And so I wouldn't be able to really get the +2 on it. And even if I did, I'd have to wait till the next turn then to do the -5 and hope my opponent doesn't clear any markers off it, which is a bit much. And then I'd have to pay 4 black on top of that anyway, so not a good card. Shouldn't have put it in the sideboard. Should have just gone for like an extra Power Burst or Protector of the People, and that's definitely what I'm going to do. So yeah, that's it for this video. Hopefully by the time I edit it down it hasn't been too long, but if you have watched all the way to the end, thank you very much. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that now. If you have anything you want to let me know about this deck or the sideboard, any advice, maybe tell me what you're running in your Mechikabura deck, go ahead and do that now in the comment section down below. And thanks for watching.